After more than 5,000 hours in RimWorld, I've fed colonies across almost every biome, difficulty and challenge imaginable. In this guide, I'll show you exactly how I keep my colonies fed from the moment they crash land all the way to the endgame. We'll cover everything from growing crops and hunting animals to ranching, cooking, food storage, surviving winter, and all the little mistakes that can leave your colonies starving. Whether you're completely new to RimWorld or already have hundreds of hours, by the end of this guide, you will know exactly how to build a reliable food supply and never worry about starvation again. So when you start off in RimWorld, you will have 50 packaged survival meals with the crash landed scenario. One pawn has a max nutrition that they need, so food consumption is 1.6 per day. Simple meals have 0.9 and this has 0.92. So a baseline you could say is 2 meals per day. And a pawn can maximum have one nutrition of storage of food here. So once this drops, this means that we're consuming 6 meals on average per day. So a little under 10 days, let's say, until we consume all of this food. So how do we grow food and feed our pawns for when our starting source of food runs out, or if we don't have food at all? So you've constructed your whole base. Now I would recommend, if you've started off with someone, you will probably need to have plants. Always start off with someone with good in plants. You do not really need to have a good cook this early on in the game. I will explain why later, but just get someone with good plants. And if you do not have anyone with good plants, then I will show you the basics of hunting. However, you're going to want to have based, if you watch the base building guide, close to rich soil. However, normal soil will also work just fine. Rich soil here, if we hold Alt, we can see that it has a fertility of 140%, while normal soil has 100%. So of course, the higher the fertility, the faster the crops will grow. You just want to start growing rice. You can see the growing size here of this one is 35. I generally try to go around 15, maybe 20 fields of rice per pawn. It's really not so important the size of the zone as it is to not have too little. So as long as you have above 15 tiles of rice per pawn, that should be good. So we have 35 here. I'm just going to grow, we have 35 here, so that's 70. That's more than enough because we have 3 pawns, so that is 45. So we have a nice surplus of rice. I always like to have a surplus. I don't like to be just on the baseline, because what if there's emergencies? What if there's a prisoner that will need to be fed? So maybe 20 to 25 tiles of rice. And if you're on rich soil, then that's even better, more efficient. The reason we want to grow rice is because it grows very quickly and it is sensitive to soil fertility. If a plant has 100% fertility sensitivity, it means that high sensitivity, it will grow slower in poor soil, but faster in rich soil. So rich soil means rice is best in that. I would never grow rice in poor soil because, as you saw before, it is very sensitive, which means it's sensitive to the lower quality soil. That's why it defaults to potato plants, RimWorld, because potatoes are very good for poor soil, because their fertility sensitivity is quite low at 40%. However, they take longer to grow. But we need food quickly, and rice is good. It does require more labor though. So you could have a mix of rice, and then to stockpile up food, you can start to grow corn. So maybe I'll just grow a little bit of corn here, which also has 100% fertility sensitivity. You can just sow it, and then it will take 11 days to grow. It says 11 days, but the real growing time will be about twice as long, because it doesn't account for the time when it's dark. And so you just use corn for the low maintenance food, and then rice for the immediate maintenance. Only worry about rice. So then we will have our pawns start to grow. So silver here will start to grow, and so if you go into work parties here, we can assign it or adjust it. So growing is harvesting crops, planting seeds, replanting trees, and sowing crops. And then plant cut is just when you manually do things like chop wood here. I'm going to show you. Right now they're the same parity, so silver will continue to sow because growing is to the left. It will have a higher priority even though it's the same number. And then I'm going to toggle plant cut to be more prioritized, and you will see that silver will first cut down any trees or anything you decide to manually chop down, like this or right here. So if you want to have a colony where you chop down trees first and immediate things, then I like to have plant cut above growing, but it doesn't really matter how you do it. I'm just showcasing the basics. You can just have it the same number. Next up, I want to talk about light and max growth temperature. So light requirement will always be at 51% for almost all crops that grow food, except for Nutrifungus in the Ideology DLC. You can grow that in the dark. You want to grow food outside, of course, and you will see that it's 74% lit. Let's see here, yeah, 72%. It's getting darker, so now it's only 60%, and it will rapidly stop growing when it turns to dark. And temperature is also important. Rice here will have a minimum growth temperature of 0 degrees and max of 58 degrees, so it will still grow very nicely in warm temperatures, but if you're in a colder climate, then it will be almost all crops will be more sensitive to cold climates. So after food has been sown, you will have a lot of time now because you still have the packaged survival meals. However, I have a freezer here, but you won't really need a freezer because once we've grown all of this rice, we can see here that the rice is grown. It will of course be automatically harvested, and we can already see here that it will yield 6 harvest yield. So you will get 6 rice per crop. Now rice takes 40 days to spoil, so you won't really need a freezer early game. I always make one because it's convenient to have, but really the only reason you would need a freezer is if you're hunting. So why don't we start to hunt a little bit? You want to have a ranged pawn, make sure that they have a ranged weapon, and assign them to hunt. The pawn with the highest animal skill, they will be the one, and the shooting skill, they will be the one who will be most efficient at hunting, because they are less likely to enrage the animals that they hunt. But I always hunt animals that won't fight back. So alpacas are nice. Go into the wildlife tab here, and you can already see here which animals will hunt or attack after being hurt or not. We can hunt for yaks or hares, but I like to go for medium-sized opponents, so alpacas. And then we will see that Poro dude here, he will quickly start to hunt. Actually, the both of them will hunt. If you're hunting an animal, then a ranged weapon is better, because again, less likely to enrage the animals. But we're not even hunting animals that will be enraged. Eventually though, we're hunting this alpaca, but a bear is hunting it already. I guess we're just going to help the bear hunt the alpaca. So once it has been hunted, it will be hauled. You want to make sure that you can set corpses to animal corpses. Do not allow rotten ones, and then they will haul into the freezer. So to butcher up the animals, you'll need a butcher's table, which you can construct right here. And we want to set the animals to be butchered. I like to just do it forever, so they're out of the way, and then drop on the floor because it's already in the freezer. And then whoever has the cooking skill will start to butcher. We'll get a lot of meat that will spoil in about 2 to 3 days, so you want to keep that in a freezer. If you do not have any place to grow, if you're in an extreme climate, then hunting is basically the only way to get food early on. Next up, what I like to do is construct a nutrient paste dispenser. Probably the best food source. I have used it almost an entire playthrough, but in the early game it's especially important. You want to deconstruct the wall of the freezer going into the recreational or the dining room, and then go into the production tab and get a nutrient paste dispenser. It will act as a wall, so the freezer will still be intact, and then get 2 hoppers. Make sure to set them to 1 priority above the freezer, because otherwise they will fill up the freezer and they won't properly put it in here. So put that to critical, and then pawns will automatically put that in, whoever has the cooking skill. The good thing with nutrient paste is that it won't give food poisoning. If you eat raw food like this in RimWorld, there is a high chance for you to get food poisoned. There are crops that do not really bring food poisoning or give a lower chance to have it. We have a strawberry plant. Strawberries are delicious even when raw. I almost never go for strawberries, but if you're in a niche situation where you cannot really cook down the food, you can go for strawberries, but I generally just like rice better. Or if you just have poor soil, grow like 30 or 25, 30 crops of potatoes, and that will be enough. So at least in vanilla RimWorld, you've got corn, potatoes, rice, and strawberries. So we've covered all of those crops for food. However, I would also recommend when you've grown all your food to grow a little bit of cotton for your clothing and your recreational stuff and everything. And also grow some heel root. This will be the medicine for your colony. And then also grow some psychoid, some smoke leaf, and some hops to manage your pond's mood with drugs. However, now let's eat a little bit of nutrient paste. So pawns will only consume 6 nutrition for a nutrient paste meal, which provides 0.9 food. And this is good because a simple meal in RimWorld, or the packaged survival meal that you saw, they use up 10 food for 1 meal, whereas here it's 6 raw food for 1 meal. So it's 60% or let's say 40% less food required for the same amount to feed a pawn normally. This is really important. The only downside is they get this one likes nutrient paste is -4, but in this case this pawn was acidic, so he can eat nutrient paste, but usually it's only -4, but the upsides, you don't have food poisoning, you don't have to spend time cooking, which is very important early game, and you can grow less food, honestly, because it doesn't consume as much. If the temperature in the freezer gets too high, you will see that the food will start to spoil, and when the food spoils, then what will happen is, the food will rot, there will be a little bit of rot stink, so you generally don't want to waste food. Always keep your freezers at -5 degrees. I don't keep it at even 0 degrees Celsius or -1 at the exact freezing temperature, so 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep it at a buffer, because when the doors are open, a little bit of heat will leak out, and then it will stick the timer on the meat there, so especially when there's a heat wave, you want a buffer. So as you expand the base and you get more prisoners, you need to prepare in advance more food. So again, 15 to 20 tiles of rice, you want to stack that up. You really don't need to worry about food too much unless you have winters and such. So we will go into that and we'll show you how to deal with winters. So here I have a RimWorld colony in one of my playthroughs where I have about 22 humans, which means that I will need almost 300 crops. I have 274 rice plants here, 237 here. I have about 300, so the calculations are a bit accurate, and then I have a lot of excess food. Once you have a bigger colony, you can start to cook down food. So you can treat your pawns. You want to have the nutrient paste there in case food gets low. But if you have a good cook or two, then you want to go into an electric stove. Make sure that it's a bit warmer, because the freezer will slow down the electric stove. And then I like to set up simple meals like this. So simple meals are better than nutrient paste in terms of mood, but they consume the default amount of food. So I make until I have, 50 in this case. The buffer isn't really too important. If you have maybe 5 people, you can do 30 and then unpause at 10. So the cook will chef up the food until it's 30 meals, and then he will take a break and then continue once it drops below 10. Otherwise, what happens is if you do not pause when satisfied, the cook will have to go back and cook again the moment he cooks 30, or the moment it goes below 30 meals. And I do not like cooking one simple meal at a time. You always want to batch 4 times. Always batch. You will save a lot of time. However, if you want to have pawns become even happier, you can get fine meals here. They require 5 protein, 5 vegetarian. So regular fine meals, they are like simple meals, but they require meat and vegetables. However, if you want vegetarian fine meals, so only plants, you will need 15 nutrition. Let's see here. 15 vegetarian ingredients. You remember, the nutrient paste only takes 6. And for a fine meal, you will need 15. So let me see here. So you will grab 15, yeah. So it is above double as much as a nutrient paste and 50% more than a simple meal. This means that if you want simple meals for your pawns, you will need about, well, maybe 22, 20, how is my math? Yeah, like 22, 23 rice plants per pawn instead of 15, 23 or 22. And that's just the baseline. So I would go for like 30 crops per person if I were to do 5 meals. You could substitute it by just hunting. So if you start to hunt as well when you get your 5 meals, then the normal 5 meals will be way more efficient because it only takes 5 vegetarian and 5 protein. And then if you really want to farm in RimWorld, you can decide to get a lavish meal. A lavish meal will need 8 in cooking. So a regular lavish meal requires 10 protein and 10 vegetarian. So instead of 15 rice plants, for example, you would need 20 total nutrition. So, and a vegetarian 5 meal or a vegetarian lavish meal will require 25 vegetarian ingredients. That is more than double the amount than like 150% in a simple meal. You would need to grow more than twice, almost 3 times as much than when you're consuming or producing regular simple meals, and about, well, 25 divided by 6, that is like, is it 6 times more food than a nutrient paste? Something like that. I'm not going to go too concrete into calculations, but I'm putting it into perspective. Now you will need, if you want to get lavish meals, like 35, 40 rice plants per person. So that is a bit insane. But if you like to grow stuff, or you have a smaller colony, or you have an excess too much food, you can start to produce some lavish meals. But I always go for simple or fine meals. But you could always stick to nutrient paste the entire game. It depends on how sad your pawns are, really. Because if they're happy, then they don't need the extra food mood. You're just sacrificing something with each tier of food. Next up, I'm going to talk about hydroponics. Because, well, if you want lavish meals, then at least you can do is construct this thing, which is very efficient. Or if you're in a climate where there is winters or extreme summers, then hydroponics is probably the most important thing you will need to survive. So a hydroponics basin has a fertility of 280%, so it's double as fertile as rich soil. This means that for every pawn you will need, if it was like 15, I think it's 12 to 15 rice in normal soil, then right here you would probably only need a little bit over 2 hydroponics basins, so 6 to 8 rice plants. I like to have like 3 or 4 hydroponics per person because I like to have a buffer, and you can start to grow rice. You will see here, I will speed up the game a bit, but that is growing extremely quickly, 3% every few minutes. I mean, this is insanely good, so hydroponics is the best. However, you cannot grow corn in here. You can only grow potato. I would not grow potatoes in here because, again, the fertility sensitivity. If you grow potatoes in here, that is abysmal. Go for rice. You can also grow heel root, which I have here, and then some drugs for mood. So hops and psychoid, I got a little bit of that. So what is the layout for a hydroponics basin? Well, first get the sun lamp and then look at the area. Then you want to get a piece of hydroponics, and then like a shuriken, to go 1, 2. So you can go like align every single hydroponic like this, and then to the left of the one that has been placed, you place another hydroponic. And then on the right axis, clockwise, you want to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. So already you've filled up most of the radius. You will see it's like a shuriken, so it's quite easy to remember. And then you can fill in the 3 hydroponics just like this. So this is the easiest way that I do it. I actually like to have it symmetrical, so the one in the middle, I like to have one tile up like this. You can place all your heaters here, and you can base everything in, get the temperature modulation, make sure everything is nice and cool. However, if you have hydroponics, the biggest issue is the power needed and the fact that it is quite expensive. So if you are in a climate where it's hard to grow, be sure to prepare the infrastructure for hydroponics. So a lot of steel, a lot of components, and a lot of power. And then of course, if you have winters, so if you do not have hydroponics, one thing you will need to do is in the summer, you want to stockpile up for the winter. So if we go into the growing period here, in this example, we have 30-60 day. So in actuality, if you do not have hydroponics and you're preparing for the winter, you want to grow double as much food as the summer that you would need to consume. So instead of 15, if you have a year-round growing period, you will go for 30 per pawn, because you're supplementing for the days that you're eating now and then for the winters, of course. So just grow double as much if you have winters coming, or just get hydroponics to prepare for the winter. Now there's an event in RimWorld where you can get blight on your crops, and this is very important that you select and cut all blighted. And you want to make sure that your planters are cutting that. Do not let them sow. So select that, and you want to disallow sowing right here. You can select all and disallow sowing for a bit, because if they start to grow while it's blighted, then it will spread to the newly grown crop. So then the blight will never disappear. So get rid of the blighted crops like this, and then toggle everything to be sown again. If you have a lot of crops that need to be harvested and you don't want to sow, then you can just toggle off sowing, and pawns will just harvest the crops that have already been grown. Especially if there's a toxic fallout, you will need to be more precise with food. So have hydroponics, and then if there's a toxic fallout, be sure to hunt all the animals on the map immediately, because they will get poisoned by the toxic fallout, and their meat will be rotten when you kill them. If you're in need of a lot of food later in the game, then I would not recommend hunting big groups individually, because then they have a chance to go all manhunter at once and attack you all at once. So then I would just go with a group to shoot them down like this. And yeah, they're all going for us now, Muffalo Revenge. Because if you were to hunt normally, you would get overwhelmed. So this is how you do mass hunting. And then the corpses will automatically be unforbidden. If you kill an animal when you have not toggled it to be hunted, it will be forbidden. And then you will not even notice that the corpse will rot. I will showcase. We've got this dough here and it's forbidden. So pawns will not do that. You need to unforbid it, select it for hunting, and that will be fine. Next up, I will go into a niche thing. I almost never do this, but it's ranching. So ranching animals is quite simple. You will need to go into the MISC tab, get a pen marker. I like to keep them in one spot, easier to maintain. But if you go into the structure and get a fence here, just construct that with a fence gate, and then put a pen marker in here. And then you can get animals here, whichever animals you want. Select them. You can decide to auto cut plants in pen that you do not want. I don't really mess with this. Just let you can cut down trees actually. So if you auto cut plants in pen, it will cut down all the trees and let all of the fresh grass grow. So that is quite useful. However, you can see here that you can force display animal. There will be a nutrition growth at the bottom left, where you can see that it will grow 2.33 nutrition. And so for chickens, they consume 0.22 normally, an adult. You can have like 10 chickens in here. Yep. And then cows 0.8, so you can have about 3 cows. Yeah, it says here max count 2, and for the goat 6, and then chicken 10. So you can see the amount of animals you can have in the pen for the current pen size. And you can of course expand the pen if you want to. Another source of food for the animals in the pen is kibble. Go into the butcher table, and then you can make kibble out of hay. And then raw vegetables, raw meat, or animal products. You will need to grow hay for that. And hay can be grown anywhere really. Hay grass here, fertility sensitivity 60%. So you can grow it in poor or rich soil. But I always grow it in better soil. It will take a bit of time to grow. You can feed the hay raw to them or make it into kibble. And just make sure to have that on a shelf so it doesn't deteriorate. So get a shelf here, and then go into critical priority, get hay grass, and then kibble. We have a bulk goods trader here, so these are the people where you can buy animals from. You can also buy animals from, well, settlements that you go out and trade with. In this case, we have some pigs that we can can grow. Bulls are good. Dromedaries. If you're strictly growing for food, I think tortoises are actually the best. However, even just having some animals to ranch while you have a lot of space is a good way to get passive food. I also like to ranch for the animals that can caravan out, like alpacas or muffalos. That is the only reason that I ranch. You want to make sure that you also get some animal spots, because your animals will get sick and you will have to tend to them. If there's a toxic fallout or anything, then animals, they will automatically stay under a roof. Get an animal flap here. So with an animal flap, it will act as a door, but it won't restrict them like a normal door does. So they can still go into the pen here. And then if there's a toxic fallout, the animals will spend their time under the roof. So you can get a little shelter here. Maybe if it's cold outside, you can place down heaters as well. And if you do not want them to gain filth, then you can place down some straw matting here. Actually buy a few pigs. So once you've got the pigs, you want someone with the animal skill, the handling skill that can tame, train, and harvest resources from animals. Here we go. That is pretty goddamn good. And you can also tame alpacas and boom rats for chem fuel. If you want to get a passive source of chem fuel for chem fuel power generators. If you want to have chickens, they are quite basic. They will lay eggs, so you will need an egg box here, at least a few of them. Your haulers will automatically empty that. It does not protect from temperature damage, so you want to make sure that the eggs are always warm. And then pawns will just haul them to the freezer. So you can decide what animals to ranch. If you want to restrict them, go into the animals tab here. You can decide to slaughter animals if you do not want them manually. You can release animals to the wild if you do not want them as well. Or you can sterilize some animals. Maybe the males if you do not want the male chickens to impregnate the female ones. You just want the female chickens to lay unfertilized eggs for you to eat. You can do that. You can see the age, the gender, the life stage of your animals. You can see which animals need special training, but for regular ranching animals, they just need to be maintained in something like this. But if you go into manage auto slaughter here, you will see a more advanced type of butcher. If you're a little bit overwhelmed, I will simplify it for you. So you have a total amount of alpacas here. And if you do not want the amount of alpacas to ever go above a certain limit, because here now the growth limit for alpacas is 2. So we can go here and just set that to 2. Then if there's above 2 alpacas, they will automatically be slaughtered. For chickens, I like to have like 1 male adult, maybe 2 or 4 female adults. And so immediately when all the chickens have grown up, then they will be slaughtered. Or if you want to slaughter the chickens right as they hatch, you can do that. However, I would slaughter the chickens when they're fully mature, get the most meat. I may be wrong about this, the harvesting yield. Set the adult max count, and then all the children will automatically be slaughtered once they reach adulthood. And then you probably do not want to slaughter your pregnant chickens or animals or the bonded ones, but you can decide to toggle that on if you want to. And then there is literally ranching for every single animal in the game. So if you want like a little zoo, that is how I would do it, and you can manage all sorts of ranches. Next up is packaged survival meals. If you're traveling a lot, you can get packaged survival meals. They provide 0.9 nutrition, so just like a simple meal, but they are a bit more expensive to make. I almost never use these unless I am on a long trip, but you will need 6 proteins, so like 6 animal products or meat, and then 6 vegetarian. So it overall takes about 20% more nutrition than a simple meal. But if you have like somewhere you want to go, you want to travel to a far place and you don't want the food to spoil, if you're a tribes person, you can go for Pemmican here. It is not very nutrition dense, but if you want pemmican, you can make that at a stove as well. You can also cook at a campfire here. So pemmican can be cooked here in simple meals. Pemmican requires 20 meat and 20 vegetarian, and you get 64 pemmican, which has 0.05 nutrition. So if you were to make this right here, let's say one, you use up as much as a simple meal, 10 ingredients, you get 16 pemmican, and that is about 8 nutrition, so a little bit less than a simple meal. You'll be wasting a little bit of food, but pemmican is like a tribal way of preparing food that doesn't spoil. It takes about 1 or 2 years to spoil. Pemmican takes 1.2 years to spoil. So another thing to do with the freezer if you want to is, yeah, what I have is a bunch of shelves here. And I have the priority set where I do not have rotten things, and then I only have foods. I have medicine in my food storage because herbal medicine spoils. Ambrosia and wort. Wort is spoiling. It's the beer, the thing you use for beer. And then plant matter. And you can also get animal corpses here. If you're a cannibal, you can eat human meat. You can cook meals with human meat. If you want to go into specifics here, you can disable everything, make human meat. You can decide more in specifics what you want to cook. And also which skill is best for cooking. I would generally start to cook meals when you have like above 5 or 6 in cooking. Otherwise, you have a higher chance of getting food poisoning. I always want to keep the kitchen nice and clean. Have steel tiles or sterile tiles or anything else. You can see the cleanliness by pressing G or holding Alt. And then you want the shelves to have one priority more than the floor stockpile. So just copy over the same bill as you have on the storage, and then you want to plant it on the floor, and so it will always prioritize things to be on shelves before the floor. But you need the floor stockpile so that corpses can be hauled in there when they will be ready to be processed. I also like to have an orbital trade beacon to trade away excess food. So special food, we have some, well, insect jelly. This you get from insect infestations. You can get food poisoning from it, but I almost always just sell it off. But otherwise you can consume it. If a pawn consumes insect jelly, it will be quite good. And you of course have the human meat, which, well, if you want to butcher up a human, just simply turn on human-like corpses to be butchered. And we've got some human meat here and some human liver. And you can turn that into food if you have a cannibalistic ideology, which we have here. By default, in nutrient paste hoppers will not have human meat toggled, so you will have to toggle that on manually. Same for insect meat. Then you've got Nutrifungus with RimWorld ideology, and this can grow anywhere as long as it is dark. So here we've got some Nutrifungus, and this thing will take 6 days to grow, but actually it's like 12 days because of the resting period. Fertility sensitivity of 15%, because this thing is able to grow in fungal gravel. You will need the tunnel meme. And so if you have a mountain, you can grow fungal gravel in a mountain base. You will need to grow it under a mountain roof though, so fungal gravel here. And you can start to grow Nutrifungus over here. Except Nutrifungus in fungal gravel will grow, yeah, much slower. The fertility of fungal gravel is only, it's 70%, so just like poor soil. Make sure it's nice and dark. And then lastly, you can get cacao. So a cacao tree will produce chocolate. So chocolate here, it's quite nice to eat. It will provide a little bit of recreation here. So food consumption, insect jelly provides that and stuff. So yeah, always keep your growing zone close to the freezer. Not really too necessary, but then the haulers won't have to go and haul too much. Do not grow too much food, an excessive amount, and not too little, because if you grow too much, you'll be spending so much time trying to manage food storage, it will be overflowing. Your growers will spend all the time on the fields, and your people will have to spend all the time managing food that they don't know what to do with. And if you grow too little, then you're always on the edge of starvation. So as I said, you will notice when your food storage is either increasing or decreasing. Another mistake that I see is just hunting everything on the map, and then you just have to spend all the time butchering the map. I mean, only if there's an emergency do you mass hunt all the animals on the map. but you do not need an excess amount of food, because you will have to store it and you will have to manage it. It's a lot of work. I'm going to show you a few colonies here, but the most basic one is a temperate forest with 100 people. So here I've got an excess amount of food, of course, because I'm feeding 100 people. But yeah, we've got the kitchen here. Always keep your kitchen nice and clean. I've got tool cabinets here as well. But I have a massive freezer here with a lot of coolers. And I have a large excess of food, because when you run out of food, then you will quickly start to see the stockpile run out. Also got chocolate, as I mentioned before, from the chocolate trees over here. And so for a colony like this, I'm utilizing potatoes in the poor soil. In the normal soil, I'm only using up rice, because corn here takes too long to grow. Rice is most efficient, but it takes the most amount of work. But with 100 people, we have a lot of workers. And so people are always eating. We're even cannibals here, because we need to goddamn eat. Here I have a colony where I'm on the extreme desert. Only have one pond here, but I have just hydroponics with rice. That is pretty much enough. And in an extreme desert colony like this, I have a lot of potatoes here. And I'm going for a cannibalistic type of playthrough, because, well, surviving here is quite tough. Lots of human meat, but you could just do this with hydroponics. In this case, I would just grow rice in these hydroponics. Actually, you won't need a sun lamp if the temperature is just fine and you don't have the power. You don't need a sun lamp. I have a sun lamp-less hydroponic placement, because the extreme desert here isn't too bad. So if it's spring or summer in your colony and of your like tundra boreal forest type, just open up the roof and save the power. And yeah, just mass growing potatoes everywhere. Even got cactuses, because there's no trees here. And then in my iceberg playthrough, where it is literally at the edge of the sea ice here, I simply have hydroponics. 2 hydroponics with rice, and then nutrient paste to preserve food, because we do not have the luxury to afford like lavish refined meals here. This was just from a raid, I believe, but 1 nutrient paste with 2 sets of hydroponic sun lamps with a lot of power from toxifier generators. That worked for this playthrough. I did not go for a cannibalistic playthrough here. If you have RimWorld Odyssey, you can also do fishing, though fishing is quite efficient. You just go for fishing, where is it? Research that. And then just grow fishes, do until you have X, and people will start to fish with the animal skill. So yeah, you at least have the basics of food in RimWorld. So you know now how to grow in a temperate map. If there's winters, then you grow double as much in the summer per pond. And if you don't want to do that, then construct hydroponics. And hydroponics works in extreme climates. You just need to prepare the power for it. And if you do not have enough of that, then start to fish if you have RimWorld Odyssey, or you start to hunt animals on the map for meat. And if you do not have enough food, you can use nutrient paste to conserve food. Or if you have a lot of food, you can start to produce fine meals and lavish meals for mood. If you have insect meat you want to get rid of, turn that into fine or lavish meals. It will offset the negative mood. If you're in a mountain base, then start to get the thunder ideology and start growing Nutrifungus at mass scale, so you can grow under a mountain. Or you can just go for hydroponics in the mountain and just regulate your hydroponics with the proper heaters or coolers. So yeah, that is a pretty decent guide for food. I really do hope you've enjoyed, and if you're bored, then watch this video next.